changing potential. Now, if we look at three of the many directions of the current paradigm shift, going from mass production to ICT flexible production, we're going from homogeneity, standard identical products. Remember what Ford said, you can have any color as long as it's black. The whole idea of mass production was the more of the same, the cheaper the unit, and therefore the larger the market. Now we have moved to diversity. We have adaptability, including upgrading as change, niche markets, the so-called long tail, lots of little niche markets, potential for a great variety of lifestyles on a common ICT platform. In every case, the whole idea is that what makes for diversity is the common platform and the fact that information technology as a production tool allows changing models, changing, custom-made, all sorts of variety, including very strong adaptability. But we don't yet understand how much of a change that means. We're moving from national economies to globalization. Why? Because there is no limit to information flows, and therefore there is no reason why the economy should be not global. However, that does not mean that the state, the national governments or national states disappear, as some people have misunderstood. There is the possibility of a global economy, but with differentiated national, supranational, and local spaces. So governments become more and more important in defining their own space as part of the global. Think global, act local. Unavoidable environmental damage was the characteristic of the mass production paradigm, because it was about using more and more materials to make more and more physical, tangible products. It was a paradigm about tangible products. It could not avoid, also because of the processes of production with no systems of control of pollution or whatever, it could not stop. You couldn't even think about it. In fact, nobody really thought about the environment until already in the late 60s with the Club of Rome coming out with a report saying, hey, we're going mad, stop it. So we got a set of technologies that are capable of stopping it. This set of technologies has the capacity for environmental protection because it can measure, monitor, and control, because of the possibility of recycling and refurbishing, because of conservation as a possibility, closed-loop systems, avoiding pollution and waste, and every other thing that can be done with information and with consciousness, awareness about the thing. So this means that each paradigm opens different routes for making profits, as well as for achieving socially desirable goals. What's the potential paradigm shift in production process innovation? If we look at each activity and the practices enabled by ICT. In fabrication industries, we can have minimum energy and materials use, custom designed materials, so they're more expensive, they're more exact, so use less of them. Zero defects, zero resource waste, designed for low energy use in operation, planned upgradability, not obsolescence. Disassembly, recycling. We move to the process industries. Energy saving and intelligent process controls, low energy processes, byproducts seen as source of value. The trend towards closed loop systems, custom-made materials, development of nanotechnology and biotech. Nanotechnology will allow us to make many, many tiny, tiny things which are now big, and to do many activities which we now do with big equipment, to do it with little things. Biotechnology also capable eventually of producing under conditions which are not energy intensive. What would be the product profile? We can have more services than tangible products. The whole of the mass production paradigm was about turning anything that you did with your hand into something that you did with an electric motor. Even brushing your teeth in the end, not just making food or, everything. Just change it to a product. We can think of pleasure in quality leisure, not in having objects. Very high quality products, smaller, multi-purpose, like a mobile phone today. You don't have to have the camera, the thing, the phone, and they're all in one. Durable, high-tech, plus handmade. The coexistence of high-tech and handmade is one of the sources of the probable employment of millions of people in the world doing very well-priced handmade things that will be valuable in the luxury patterns. Widely differentiated range by style of living, seeking not equality, not homogeneity, but equivalent satisfaction. We can then revive identities, religious identities, personal identities, historical identities, national identities, sports people, this and that, the other, thousands of different reasons for being part of a group that's not identical to the others, and the pride of having that difference and the style of living that that could have, which can cost different things and which does not need enormous amounts of energy necessarily, that can bring equivalent satisfaction. Dave Carter yesterday said that sometimes the poor didn't like to get terminals instead of computers because that was like giving them a second-rate thing. Well, if we could get to a point where the different styles of living were a source of satisfaction within the range of energy, healthy, quality, all these new things that we're appreciating, we could probably get to better standards of living for everybody, because we're talking about the whole world now. We're not just talking about one city. We're talking about all cities. We're not talking about one country. We're talking about all countries. And this is possible as long as we don't pretend that it's going to be all the same. Personal transport, well, I shouldn't talk about that today. That's your area. But anyway, information-based, variety of means, revaluing of time, flexibility of location, innovation in individual and collective transport, car as the last resort. Freight transport, full awareness of environmental impact and full costing, and that depends on governments a lot. Optimizing of routes by bulk and weight, innovation in vehicles, innovation in packaging and distribution, and there'll be a lot. I think we're going to have to go back to dirigibles and who knows what else. Energy, variety of sources, local diversity, interactive users that buy and sell, conservation, combined heat and power, intelligent controls in home and office. Again, another one of the areas that you people are working on. Urban development, another of your areas. Integrated cities, living, work, education, and leisure together, so you don't have to take transportation. Full connectivity for multiple activities. Transport avoiding design. Environmentally intelligent buildings. Well, but the realization of that potential will depend on the policy context. But our present way of living is still wrapped in the old. Even ICT adopted the consumerist mode of marketing. You know what it reminds us of? You know what that is? That's an automobile. That was an automobile. The early automobiles looked like horse carriages. So you get all the new things. There's the engine, but the guy is sitting as if he had the reins in the hands, and he has his, he's driving as if he was driving the horses. And we call horsepower what's in the engine, and the whole thing is exactly like. But a few years later, we get the Model T, and from then on, you get the real paradigm, mass-produced, different, with everybody inside, with the whole. A paradigm takes a long time because we all have to change, and we don't like to change. So, but why has it taken so long this time? There are specific reasons why it has taken so long this time for us to change our consumerist pattern. Circumstances have given a new lease of life to the old paradigm. The low price of oil in the 80s and 90s, the low price of labor in China and Asia. The old American way of life is still seen as the model of well-being to imitate, because it has not been replaced in America. Yet, given the way globalization is evolving today, we would need 7 planets. We just cannot go on this way. It's impossible. So let's look at what happened with the oil prices. After the oil shock, prices came back down. We have the mass production paradigm, cheap energy until the first line. Then we have the oil crisis, and then we go to the NAS. So we have the ICT paradigm on the other. When prices went up, there were conservation policies, energy saving practices. You had to have how much the refrigerator consumed and everything. Some of us remember, others weren't around. The alternative energy investment, a lot of money going into alternative solar, wind, this and that and the other, in the late 70s. Well, you know what? When the prices came down to the same as they used to be before, all those projects were abandoned and a lot of companies went bankrupt that were doing the alternative energies. And that happened just when the diffusion of ICT was most intense. So there was no real incentive to jump out of the energy intensive and into information intensity. What happened was we had both. We had this marriage between the old consumerist mode and ICT. We've got to divorce ICT from the consumerist mode and marry it to green. And that's what you people are doing here today. But prices of oil are going up again, precisely due to globalization. The China price made most products cheaper and cheaper, but not through technological advance as in electronics, but through extremely low-cost labor. That meant that the old pattern of consumption was revitalized in the advanced countries and was adopted with fury in the developing ones. Rather than durability, which should have come in, disposability came back as the desired norm. It is cheaper to throw out than to repair. That is a fact. It is almost impossible. In fact, in order to change this, we're going to have a whole maintenance industry, and the fabricators are going to have to create disassembly, refurbishing, maintenance, etc., planned into what they do. But the rising cost of energy, materials, and freight will erode the cost advantage of labor. Only ICT and internet-based services will remain cheap. And therefore, when those prices start changing, people will start seeing a difference in which way to go. So with all that, will the new paradigm prevail after all? If it's so strongly intertwined with the old, with all the super mass materials consumption and energy consumption? Well, yes. If economic circumstances change, if it becomes an aspiration of the majorities, if it is a positive sum game between business and society. We live in a market economy. It would be silly to think that we can change the well-being of the great majority